I'm Henry Martinez, and welcome to Season 1, Episode 6 of the Daisy Glaze Podcast. Today, as we see headlines about war everywhere, I thought we'd talk about that subject as it relates to the decade of the 70s. The decade began with war. Vietnam had already been raging for several years. It was slow and steady, but our troops finally started to come home until the complete U.S. withdrawal in early 1973. But as much as our beleaguered nation wanted war behind us, there was a constant threat of it during the entire decade. In October 1973, Israel fought the Yom Kippur War against an Arab coalition led by Egypt and Syria. Unlike a similar war in 1967 that Israel decisively won, this was more of a tense standoff that ended with a UN-brokered ceasefire. Of course, the United States and Soviet Union were embroiled in a Cold War that always threatened to turn hot. Thankfully for me and future generations, we avoided a direct conflict with the Russians. The decade did introduce terrorism as a weapon that became all too prevalent in society. There were multitudes of plane hijackings, as well as the infamous massacre of Israeli athletes during the 1972 Munich Olympics. This wasn't warfare in the conventional sense, but that was the point. Conventions were going out the window, never to fully return. But on the plus side, we as Americans became a lot more clear-eyed and realistic about war. We turned away from deeply unpopular drafts and adopted the volunteer army. We realized that in the nuclear age, mutual assured destruction wasn't a particularly survivable option, and we made it clear to the politicians that prolonged wars without exit strategies were losing propositions. Well, it's fair to say that not all of these lessons stuck. But for a brief moment, it seemed like much of the nation was more together than divided, as it had been before. I'm glad I was alive to see that in the 1970s. Let me conclude by quoting the great Edwin Starr tune released at the dawn of the 70s. It encapsulated what many Americans were feeling at the time. War. What is it good for? Absolutely nothing. It's not too late to feel that way again. And that concludes another episode of Daisy Glaze, the podcast. Thanks for joining me, and let's all pray for a just and peaceful outcome to what's happening today in the Middle East.